There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. The test is in 4 sections. Write all your answers in the listening question booklet. At the end of the real test, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to an answer sheet. Now turn to section 1.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today I am going to tell you about the research I have been conducting into the history of soap. While you may be able to find some information on the origins of soap, it is not a substance which has excited a great deal of study so far. What we do know is that even as long ago as 2500 BC, soap was being used. Of course, initially it was only ever used on clothing rather than the body itself. In fact, although soap has existed for so many years, the use of soap for personal hygiene was unheard of until fairly recently, and is considered to be a relatively modern notion. So we can only assume that other activities must have provided the basis from which this key concept arose. To make soap, you need to combine 3 materials in relatively exact proportions. So how is it that these primitive people from over 2,000 years ago could have discovered soap? Well, what these people lacked in technology, they certainly made up for in practical skills. I carried out some experiments using basic techniques to try to find out what people without any chemical knowledge might have observed. And I was able to demonstrate that they would indeed have been able to make a soap-like substance that is not dissimilar to the one we know today. However, it is fair to assume that, as the process requires a certain amount of time and specialization, soap would most likely have only been available in the wealthy communities. Although there are claims that the British Celts and their European counterparts used soap, there is no real evidence that the British colonies of the Iron Age had access to such a product. Now, the history of soap is not easy to discover. As soap is an organic substance, no traces of it remain in archaeological sites, so we have had to rely almost entirely on written texts for our discoveries. Fortunately, there are many of these. The first known written mention of soap was on Sumerian clay tablets dating from about 2500 BC. The tablets spoke of the use of soap in the washing of wool. In another incident, a medical document from about 1500 BC mentions that Egyptians bathed regularly. It also describes how they made soap by combining alkaline salts and oil which they extracted from vegetables. We also know that the Romans used a mixture of earth, soda, and wine to clean their clothes and pots. For the Romans, bathing was not just a matter of hygiene. It was a form of relaxation, a social activity. The bather moved from room to room, getting progressively hotter, until they reached a steamy room where dirt was sweated out and scraped away with a metal blade. The Romans used scented bath oils, but these were used to moisturize the skin rather than to cleanse it, and there is no evidence that they used soap in this way. This is not to say that the Romans did not have soap. During the excavation of Pompeii, a city that was buried under the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 AD, an entire soap factory was revealed, showing that they did in fact have access to soap, but that they simply did not use it for personal hygiene.
Test 3, Section 2. You will hear an extract from a talk about facilities for students with disabilities. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 13. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 13.
Welcome to Student Times, the programme with all the latest on what's happening at universities around the country. Today we'll be discussing disabled applicants and the kind of support they can expect to find, or not find, at the university of their choice. With me to tell us more is Student Disability Advisor Sally Taylor. Good morning, Sally.
Good morning, Hugh. I'd like to start by pointing out that although 1 in 4 people has some kind of disability, the proportion among students is much lower. This is partly because most students are under 25 and many people only develop their disabilities as they get older, but it's also because some universities don't do much to encourage access. It is true, though, that some have quite sticky problems when it comes to, for instance, wheelchair access, ancient buildings, cobbled streets built centuries ago, and so on. When faced with such a situation, some universities make an extra special effort to provide for students with particular disabilities, while others have specialist accommodation. In fact, all universities should have a written policy statement on students with disabilities, setting out what facilities they have, what their attitude is, and what they're prepared to do. But having said that, only you can properly understand the challenges of any disability you have, and so before accepting a place at a university, or even while you're considering applying, if only to raise the university's awareness, it's good to talk to them and find out how much they can and will do for you. The problem is who to talk to. Most universities and some students' unions have a disability advisor who is supposed to know what facilities they already have and will help with further arrangements if necessary or possible. However, all too often this person is a token. Sometimes it's just an extra responsibility given to a secretary. They don't know what the situation is in practice, and they don't have any real authority to change anything. So, given that for any prospective student it's best to visit a university before applying, it's an especially good idea for students with disabilities or special needs to check whether the place really does come up to scratch. In general, the university should provide personal care and assistance, and there are certain key features to look out for if you have a particular disability, including the following.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 14 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 14 to 20.
Firstly, if your mobility is impaired, check there are ramps and easy access to all buildings, not just accommodation or teaching rooms. Then, when you're inside, look for clear instructions on fire and emergency procedures for the disabled. Also, make sure there are lifts that work, not the usual ones that seem to be out of order half the time. And check for suitable lavatory facilities. There is a different set of things to look for if you suffer from any kind of hearing impairment. There should be induction loops in lecture theatres, flashing sirens in all rooms, and in accommodation, visual doorbells that light up when somebody calls round to see you. If it is your sight that is impaired, there obviously need to be braille translators of books and documents. In all buildings, the stairs, floors, doorways and windows must have clear markings, and there also have to be special fire and emergency procedures for you. If you suffer from dyslexia, you will need a computer for general use and in exams. And as exams may take you longer to complete, you should be allowed extra time in which to do so. This applies to work in general too. There are, of course, many other possible health difficulties that you may suffer from, such as diabetes, epilepsy, or heart conditions. If this is the case, check the availability of access to appropriate treatment, including medication and/or therapy. Finally, make sure that in the event of an emergency, it is clear what you and other people who may be involved have to do.
That is the end of section 2.
Now turn to section 3 on page 165. Section 3. You will hear a museum director talking to several student interns, explaining their internship duties at the museum. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25 on page 165. As you listen to the first part of the conversation, answer questions 21 to 25.
Welcome to the City Museum of Art. I'm Dr. Shirley Johnson, the director of the museum's internship program. Today, I'll be giving you an orientation to the museum and our museum administrator's internship program.
Will we get a chance to tour the museum today?
Yes, we'll start right now with a tour of the building. We'll skip the basement. Most of that part of the building is devoted to art conservation, which won't be part of your internship. Let's begin here on the ground floor with the museum offices.
I guess this is where we'll be spending most of our time, helping with the office work.
You'll spend some time working in here so you can learn what the administrative duties involve. But you'll also get a chance to experience all aspects of museum work. This room in here is the Museum Tours office.
I'm interested in that. I'd really like to help out with the tours.
That's great, because you'll all have a chance to lead some tours and maybe even to develop a tour of your own, too. Let's go up to the second floor now.
This is the boardroom in here, isn't it? Will we get to go to board meetings?
Only members of the board of directors attend those. Now, back here behind the galleries are the classrooms. You're all welcome to attend any class you want at no charge.
But we won't be teaching any, will we?
No, the staff of the education department is responsible for that. Let's move up to the third floor now and the research department. Each of you will spend some time working in here.
Great. I'd like to help with the research.
We're working on some very interesting research projects right now. Also, as an extension of your research work, you'll probably contribute to some of the museum's brochures.
I'm looking forward to that. I like writing about art. Another thing I've been hoping to be able to do is meet some artists.
You're in luck then. We've planned a reception for the first day of your internship, and you'll have the chance to meet several local artists then.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30 on page 165. Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
Could you give us a little background of the museum? I mean, when it was built and some information about the collections and things like that?
Of course. The main part of the museum was built in 1895 with a combination of public and private funds. The new wing was built 60 years later with a donation from the Rhinebeck family.
That part of the museum was built for the modern art collection, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. In the main part of the museum, we have a gallery devoted to works by local artists, our sculpture collection, and a small collection of classical European art.
You mentioned classes earlier. What kinds of classes does the museum offer?
In our adult education program, we offer a series of art history classes, and for children, we have a program of arts and crafts workshops. You can get a brochure from the office that will give you more information.
I saw a lot of chairs set up in the main hall. What are those for?
Those are there for tonight's musical performance. We offer a weekly concert series during the fall and winter, and of course, all of you are welcome to attend. Now, if there are no more questions, let's step into my office and I'll show you your schedules.
That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to Section 4. Section 4. You will hear an extract from a talk given by a lecturer from Management Department of a university on the topic Job Satisfaction. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 36. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 36. Job satisfaction is how happy an individual is with his or her job. Scholars and human resource professionals generally make a distinction between affective job satisfaction and cognitive job satisfaction. Affective job satisfaction is the overall extent of pleasurable emotional feelings individuals have about their jobs and is different from cognitive job satisfaction, which is the extent of individual satisfaction with particular facets of their jobs, such as pay, pension, arrangements, working hours, and numerous other aspects of their jobs. At its most general level of conceptualization, job satisfaction is simply how content an individual is with his or her job. Affective job satisfaction is usually defined as a one-dimensional, subjective construct representing an overall emotional feeling individuals have about their job as a whole. Hence, effective job satisfaction for individuals reflects the degree of pleasure or happiness their job in general induces. Cognitive job satisfaction is usually defined as being a more objective and logical evaluation of various facets of a job. As such, cognitive job satisfaction can be one-dimensional if it comprises evaluation of just one aspect of a job, such as pay or maternity leave, or multidimensional if two or more facets of a job are simultaneously evaluated. Environmental factors. One of the most significant aspects of an individual's work in a modern organization concerns the management of communication demands that he or she encounters on the job. Demands can be characterized as a communication load. Individuals in an organization can experience communication overload and communication underload, which can affect their level of job satisfaction. Communication overload can occur when an individual receives loads of message in a short period of time, which can result in unprocessed information, or when an individual faces more complex messages that are more difficult to process. Due to this process, given an individual's style of work and motivation to complete a task, when more inputs exist than outputs, the individual perceives a condition of overload which can be positively or negatively related to job satisfaction. In comparison, communication underload can occur when messages or inputs are sent below the individual's ability to process them. According to the ideas of communication overload and underload, if an individual does not receive enough input on the job or is unsuccessful in processing these inputs, the individual is more likely to become dissatisfied, aggravated, and unhappy with their work that leads to a low level of job satisfaction. Now look at questions 37 to 40. Now listen to the second half of the recording and answer questions 37 to 40. Superior subordinate communication. Superior subordinate communication is an important influence on job satisfaction in the workplace. The way in which subordinates perceive a superior's behavior can positively or negatively influence job satisfaction. Communication behavior, such as facial expression, eye contact, vocal expression, and body movement, is crucial to the superior-subordinate relationship. Nonverbal messages play a central role in interpersonal interactions with respect to impression formation, deception, attraction, social influence, and emotional bonding. Individuals who dislike and think negatively about their supervisor are less willing to communicate or have motivation to work, whereas individuals who like and think positively of their supervisor are more likely to communicate and are satisfied with their job and work environment. A supervisor who uses nonverbal immediacy, friendliness, and open communication lines is more likely to receive positive feedback and high job satisfaction from a subordinate. Strategic employee recognition. Employee recognition is not only about gifts and points. It's about changing the corporate culture in order to meet goals and initiatives, and most importantly, to connect employees to the company's core values and beliefs. Strategic employee recognition is seen as the most important program, not only to improve employee retention and motivation, but also to positively influence the financial situation. The vast majority of companies want to be innovative, coming up with new products, business models, and better ways of doing things. However, innovation is not so easy to achieve. A CEO cannot just order it and so it will be achieved. You have to carefully manage an organization so that over time, innovations will emerge. Individual factors. Mood and emotions form the affective element of job satisfaction. Moods tend to be long-lasting, but often weaker states of uncertain origins, while emotions are often more intense, short-lived, and have a clear object or cause. Positive and negative emotions were also found to be significantly related to overall job satisfaction. It was found that suppression of unpleasant emotions decreases job satisfaction, and the amplification of pleasant emotions increases job satisfaction. There are two personality factors related to job satisfaction: alienation and locus of control. Employees who have an internal locus of control and feel less alienated are more likely to experience job satisfaction, job involvement, and organizational commitment. The characteristics like high self-esteem, self-efficacy, and low neuroticism are also related to job satisfaction. That is the end of section 4. Now you have some time to check your answers.